So, South Park's first regular episode in over 2 years is finally aired, and my god, dude, I sat stunned for a good 30 minutes after that thing finished. Season 27's premiere, Sermon on the Mount, is, without question, the most insane thing South Park has ever done in their entire run, and I do not think that's hyperbole. On the heels of Trump suing CBS/Paramount, Colbert getting canceled for criticizing their settlement/bribe, and Matt and Trey signing a historically massive contract with Paramount, they're basically daring the President of the United States to sue them. South Park is so back, dude. Let's get into it. And hey, if you like this breakdown, not only am I going to cover every episode of the new season, assuming there is a new season, but I have a ton of South Park episode, character, and lore breakdowns across the channel, so consider subscribing. Thanks. Okay, so besides all of the Trump/Paramount stuff, which is clearly the headline of the episode, this thing also has a ton of metatextual commentary about South Park's place in our current culture. It's referencing back to major aspects of South Park history and is basically cleaning up lore so that they can keep Mr. Garrison in South Park. So before we dive into the genuine insanity of the diabolical maneuvers that Matt and Trey have made with Trump and Paramount, let's talk about the other aspects of the episode. A large chunk of the story focuses on Cartman lamenting the fact that woke culture has seemed to have severely diminished or died off since the last election, which is a very funny subversion of what you'd expect from Cartman, but it also highlights a very funny aspect of Cartman's character. He isn't just an awful little shithead, he's also incredibly selfish and self-aggrandizing about this fact. He likes being the awful little contrarian bigot because it makes him feel special and different from everyone else. Genuinely so funny to make Cartman upset about NPR's funding getting cut just because he thought listening to that brand of liberal media was hilarious. You got a kick out of hearing liberals whine. It's very Cartman. But this entire aspect of the episode is obviously saying just as much about the state of South Park as it is Cartman. South Park's satire is often built around Cartman representing a lot of the most hateful, egregious views out there. But when a lot of those ideas that felt extreme have become more accepted and mainstream, how can you satirize those viewpoints in the same way? Maybe you aren't on Twitter, and if not, good for you, but let me tell you, the last couple of years there has been a huge rise in incredibly hateful people showcasing clips of Cartman's ignorant viewpoints as though the show is actually supporting those viewpoints, commenting something stupid like, "South Park is so based for this, bro," when in reality, the context is often that Cartman is taking things to a completely unacceptable extreme. Cartman is typically the butt of the joke. He's almost never portrayed as being in the right. So this entire storyline isn't just Cartman questioning his place in the culture, but Matt and Trey questioning how South Park fits in when their brand of satire is increasingly blending in with the real shit we're seeing in the world. Why does Cartman need to exist when the world is full of Cartmans? God, Cartman walking around the town sadly with the woke is dead shirt is on, it's too funny. I think there's actually even more metatextual commentary with this entire subplot with Butters here, but we'll get to that later. The one person Cartman counted on to keep woke alive was, of course, PC Principal, and this was another small subplot that I really enjoyed. PC Principal is revealed to have changed his name to Power Christian Principal, PC Principal for short. He is just a full-on born-again Christian, and his aggressive frat bro attitude is preaching the word of the Lord now, which is shockingly just as funny. I found this really interesting from both a commentary and character perspective. It's kind of rad that we've had PC Principal around for so long now that we can have this huge character change be a shocking status quo shift when he initially started as this admittedly funny one-note character. Like, PC Principal introducing Jesus is not funny without the context of 8 seasons of regular PC Principal.
I'd like you all to put your hands together in welcoming Christ our Lord.
God, it's kind of crazy that he's been around for 8 seasons already. But commentary-wise, I feel like this is sort of ripping on the kinds of people that are so weak-willed that they kind of just follow the culture no matter where it goes, without any real ideals or beliefs that hold them down. Like, PC Principal could not have been a more aggressive warrior of woke, and yet here he has completely given up and is now eradicating the lines between church and state to inject Christian values into the classroom. Obviously, it's a very extreme example of a pendulum swing, but maybe PC Principal will sort of be the embodiment of the cultural moment in the show. That might be a fun way to shake things up with him, as long as he's always an aggressive frat bro. Bringing Jesus back to South Park is also, on another metatextual level, representative of the show going back to its roots. Jesus used to be a huge character. He just lived in South Park until he died in Iraq, and the show has often sort of examined itself within each cultural moment it exists. Season 19 comes to mind as a time where South Park was really looking at all of the remnants of what the show used to be and how they exist in an increasingly PC culture, and we got some truly great episodes navigating older characters in newer narratives. Now, with this bit of a pendulum swing back, it seems like they're sort of saying, okay, we're gonna regress a little too. We'll bring back Jesus. We're gonna have some side characters say very egregious things because people are saying more egregious things. And the people of South Park are actually weirdly united in this episode, which I'd say is a pretty unique scenario since this show often highlights cultural conflict. Randy is pretty upset that Jesus is just hanging out at South Park Elementary.
I don't think Jesus is allowed to be in schools.
I also loved that the extent of Jesus being in school was mostly just him standing there as people passed by. But the entire town is pretty upset that the new president has ushered in these changes, which also leads to a lot of characters really second-guessing their own place in all of this.
Yeah, I voted for him, but all I've seen him do is arrest and sue people.
If you've been following the show for a while, you'll know that they sort of lost Garrison in the role of their Trump surrogate for his first term, and that they've been pretty clear about not really wanting to lose regular Garrison again. There's a great season 26 episode all about it, and I knew they'd do something to keep Garrison, but I kind of expected that they would just ignore all of it, keep Garrison in town, and not really address the current administration. In fact, last year they claimed that they were so sick of covering Trump that one of the reasons they skipped out on a new season during the election was to avoid covering him and the election in general. They were very clear about this.
So that was a fucking lie.
Okay, so I don't actually think this was a full-on lie. I do think they're sick of it, but obviously they went crazier than they ever have with the Trump stuff in this episode, which is saying a lot. And I think there's a very clear reason for that. A clear reason why they feel their hand may have been forced a little bit, and it definitely has to do with this whole Paramount debacle. For one, let's talk about the fact that Trump is Saddam Hussein now. Just portrayed the exact same way down to the relationship with Satan.
You remind me more and more of this other guy I used to date. Like, a lot.
Now, I think this is once again an example of the show sort of going back to its roots. Saddam was the main antagonist of the South Park movie. He was a huge part of the show back in the day. And here they've gone with that old school method, using real photos of Trump and giving him the flappy head treatment. Something we really haven't seen from them in years. But there is a clear reason that Matt and Trey went scorched earth on Trump in this episode. The episode not only likens Trump directly to Saddam Hussein through their own show's history, and puts him in bed with Satan, but it portrays him as an unhinged, tiny-dicked lunatic who threatens to sue literally everybody. They didn't even need to bring up the Epstein list. I mean, they did, but it seemed like kind of an afterthought. Even the style of humor here is more old school South Park. It's much crasser and more cartoony, just a complete caricature. And yes, they are clearly making fun of Trump genuinely, but here's the thing, this is bait. They are baiting our president into responding to a cartoon, and you know he will. Matt and Trey are basically daring Trump to sue Paramount, but the context and circumstance surrounding this move make it truly diabolical, so let me give some context. If you don't know, Paramount has been poised to merge with the company Skydance for some time. However, that process has been stifled and delayed. During the previous election cycle, Paramount-owned CBS aired a 60 minutes interview with Kamala Harris that was pretty heavily edited. If you know anything about interviews, especially television interviews, they're edited, all of them. But the fact that they didn't make this clear or release the full transcript immediately led to Donald Trump suing 60 Minutes, claiming election interference for this dishonest editing. Now, realistically, Trump probably would not have won this lawsuit. However, mysteriously, the FCC seemed to hold up the Skydance Paramount merger while this lawsuit was happening. This led to Paramount settling with Trump for $16 million in a move that looked, we'll say, politically motivated, almost like a bribe to prevent the FCC from blocking the merger. After this happened, Stephen Colbert called out his parent company, also CBS/Paramount, for the shady-looking settlement, and would you believe that a couple days later, Paramount announced The Late Show with Stephen Colbert would be canceled after after their current contract ends, despite being the highest rated late night show on the air. Now, South Park also got swept up in this drama, and Matt and Trey were not happy about it. Basically, the delay of this merger led to major delays in the production and release of South Park, and also in the renegotiating of their streaming contract. Things got very heated. They even released this statement when the show was delayed. "This merger is a shit show and it's f***ing up South Park. We are at the studio working on new episodes and we hope the fans get to see them somehow." They basically claimed that the incoming regime from Skydance was interfering with their negotiations for their new streaming deal, and they even began the litigation process to potentially sue that incoming regime. But earlier this week, negotiations got back on track and they reached a new agreement for both a 5-year streaming contract worth $1.5 billion, as well as a new overall deal for 5 more years and 50 more episodes of South Park. These contracts basically completed the day before this episode aired. And so, less than a week after Paramount canceled Colbert for calling out their deal with Trump, Matt and Trey have signed one of the biggest deals in Hollywood history with Paramount, and their first move, literally same day, is to attack Trump on levels that Colbert could never have even conceived of. Plus, they directly called out Paramount, portraying 60 Minutes as this terrified husk of a news program that kowtows to the ego of the president every step of the way.
The townspeople claim that the president, who is a great man,
A great man.
great guy,
They basically had Jesus hushedly and directly call out Paramount and say what everyone fears, that if we've got a literal president who also throws tantrums and gets his way by suing everybody, then they probably should just throw in the towel.
If someone has the power of the presidency and also has the power to sue and take bribes, then he can do anything to anyone.
Jesus directly says that if they don't stop this, South Park is probably over. So by airing this episode, the day after signing billions of dollars worth of contracts, they've basically maneuvered Paramount into the crosshairs, fully expecting Trump to retaliate. This is, without question, the most insane thing South Park has ever done. It's one of the most insane things that has ever happened in television history, especially given the end of this episode, which features a full-on Donald Trump deepfake wandering the desert naked, ending with him exposing himself. I had no words at the end of this episode. They basically said, what is the furthest we can go to ensure that Trump will respond to this? And then they just did it. I don't even understand how this made it on the air. I am shocked that Paramount let this air. But Matt and Trey basically put every protection in place they could to make this a huge battle if it's gonna go down. They made sure that those contracts got signed before the new episode dropped. They made sure there was no easy way for Paramount to just drop them if and when Trump goes on the attack. And Trump's retaliation, given that he controls the FCC, could mean further complications for the Paramount/Skydance merger. It could blow the whole thing entirely. Matt and Trey not only gave a giant middle finger to Trump, but to Paramount and Skydance, and threw a huge wrench in their massive corporate merger. And this is what fully puts the whole Cartman and Butters subplot into context. Cartman basically makes a suicide pact with Butters and says if things don't go back to normal by like Tuesday, they've got to end it all. Cartman is basically saying this might be the end of South Park. It might be over. The act of making this episode is essentially Matt and Trey's attempt. And that's exactly why the final shot of the episode is Cartman and Butters sitting in the car. Cartman, played by Trey, Butters, played by Matt, saying, if this is it, this is it.
I think I might be going. Yep, sweet death is about to come. I love you, man.
What a ride. Now, obviously there's a lot more to talk about and speculate about for the coming season, but that is of course only if there is a season actually coming now. It's clear that Matt and Trey are at least operating under the impression that it's possible that this is the end. There's really no other real explanation for that final line, and honestly, if that's the case, what a way to go out, right? Like, what if we are living in a world where this was the final South Park episode? Matt and Trey have long said that they expect the only way for South Park to end is for it to be forced off the air, and this is absolutely the furthest they've gone to test those limits. Knowing what Paramount just did with Colbert, knowing the lawsuits Trump has been slinging left and right, I don't know, man, this could get crazy. But in case this isn't the end, let's talk about the rest of the season and what this episode is set up. Unusually, they seem to have worked on a lot of season 27 already, which is likely a result of their studio getting dicked around by the Paramount Skydance merger. It sounds like they had produced a special for early in the year, and that special is likely getting converted into episodes for the the season. But we know they have a ton already animated from the trailer that dropped a couple months ago, and we know lots about what those storylines might entail. It seems like they've planted the seeds for at least one of them here in this episode, and it also seems like a lot of the other plots could easily stem from what we've seen here. The episode showed Saddam Trump be confronted by the Prime Minister of Canada over tariffs, and the trailer showed a full-on war with Canada, literally invading the US. It seems clear that this storyline could escalate into that, but also this is a pretty fitting storyline given the history of South Park. Garrison Trump literally nuked Toronto, and of course the Canadian-American War broke out during the film Bigger, Longer, and Uncut, which also obviously heavily featured Saddam Hussein. It was interesting to see Satan again here after he had previously died and gone to heaven. I was hoping we might actually see Satan in heaven at some point, but they clearly just wanted to harken back to the South Park movie here. And I think Satan's dialogue referencing that Trump is like Saddam begs the question, are they actually going to reveal that this is Saddam Hussein in disguise, or are they going to stick with the characterization just being identical? The last we saw Saddam, he was actually trying to control Canada, so there's lots of connective tissue possibilities here. The trailer also shows French Canadians tearing down the Statue of Liberty, definitely referencing the French lawmaker who earlier this year facetiously asked the US to return the Statue of Liberty since they no longer uphold its values. There are also tons of plane crashes in the trailer, obviously referencing the disasters and air traffic control firings earlier in the year. These are all storylines that could easily stem from this new version of Trump within the show, which also kind of makes it feel like there's going to be some major serialized aspects to the season, which I think probably comes as a disappointment to some fans, given that those seasons were very hit or miss. However, the fact that so much of this season is seemingly in place already, and that they still have these next 10 weeks to adjust and fine-tune everything, it kind of has me excited about the prospect of this season being more connected and serialized. They actually have a bit more flexibility to maneuver stories around this time, whereas the obvious pitfall from like season 20 was that they did not have the time or flexibility to meaningfully adjust the story when they needed to. Matt and Trey also have a Comic-Con appearance literally the day I am releasing this video, and I think everybody is pretty eagerly awaiting what they have to say, especially after this episode, and especially if Trump responds before they go on stage, which feels very possible. Honestly, I'm probably gonna have to make a follow-up video at some point, and that might be here on the main channel, or it might be over on my more topical channel, Johnny Too Casual, but I'll be following the fallout from this episode closely for sure. Honestly, I've been covering South Park for like a decade, and nothing could have prepared me for this episode. I was shocked. Like, the maneuvering and behind-the-scenes drama feels like the most impressive Cartman schemes we've ever seen, except this shit is actually real. I really hope there's a new episode next week, and if there is, I will be covering it, but for now, we gotta wait and see how these dominoes fall. This is truly kind of unprecedented. But what did you think of this, I guess, masterclass in pettiness? How do you feel about Saddam Trump, the deepfake thing? Do you think this is gonna doom the show? It's hard to kill something you just paid $2 billion for. Let me know below in the comments, and maybe see you next week. Peace, guys.
I stay mellow watching Johnny Too Cellos. He talks cartoons, he's a really cool fellow. He keeps you posted on adult cartoons. If that's what you're into, then grab a spoon and a very big bowl of your favorite cereal. Feels like Saturday morning cartoon material. Johnny Too Cellos, watch him on YouTube. Now enjoy this groove and bust a move.